Well, welcome everyone. As Tim mentioned, my name is Joseph. I am the head technician at the Garfield Theater. Very excited to get this conversation of Reisterhood underway. We have several stars of the film are here, as well as the director. Very, very excited. Thank you so much for coming. So while we have a conversation, I want to ask for everyone to please mute themselves when they're not speaking, just in case there's some external noise, such as in my peripherals. There's a dog that now wants my love and attention. But yeah, if you could mute yourselves, and if you have a comment or a question, anything that you'd like to add, just simply raise your hand, and I'll get to you here. I'll get you in as soon as we have an opening. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Tim Swallow.
Oh, good afternoon. Good evening, everyone. I'm very glad that you're here. For those who are new, real quickly, Cincinnati World Cinema is all volunteer. We're concluding our 19th year of operation. We specialize in films that don't normally play this market, and a lot of docs, a lot of shorts, a lot of international films. And as a result, we're honored to have the film that we're going to talk about today. And I guess we're going to have to wing it, because I cannot see anything to give anyone any visual cues. But I would like to start off by talking with Cheryl. Cheryl, should I call you CJ or Cheryl?
Well, I go by both. I can't change my name on my Zoom square today for some reason. So it's Cheryl there. So you can call me Cheryl.
Okay. And you can call me AJ. You can call me Ray. You knew that was coming, didn't you?
Yes.
In any event, we're lucky enough to know that you have some local roots, and that's a good way to get in a little bit of your background as well as your motivation. My understanding is that you grew up in Dayton. You attended Miami University, Media and Communications. You worked for Procter & Gamble for a while, and also for WCPO. And that, of course, leads me to ask you, is starting out here in the Midwest, how did you wind up traveling in Europe and now living in DC, and how did you come about making this film? Cheryl?
All right. Well, you are almost 100% correct with your sleuthing. I went to high school in Dayton. My dad was in the Air Force. So I actually moved all around the country before ending up in Dayton, which is how I ended up at Miami University. I sang in the chorus in my high school, Beaver Creek High School, and we took a trip down to Miami University, and I walked around the campus and went, okay, this looks like college, and ended up going there. So that's how I ended up in Cincinnati. But I've lived all across the country, and so after living in Cincinnati for a while, and that's exactly where I got my start working. I actually started at WKRC in the newsroom, working as a production assistant and a floor director, running the teleprompter, all that kind of stuff. I thought when I graduated from college, I thought I wanted to be a news reporter, and then I realized that I just am not cut out to shoot something at 10 in the morning and have it on the air at 6. So I needed to spend a little more time and craft things. And I went to WCPO and worked there for several years, producing and directing different television specials and documentaries. And that's really where I learned what I love to do was tell people's stories. And so that's after that, I moved to, where did I go from there? Oh, I went to New Jersey, then I moved back to Ohio, lived in Columbus, so I've lived in Ohio several times. Moved to the Washington, D.C. area, and then to England, and then back to D.C. So I have moved around quite a bit. But I have to say, the way this film came about, I was perfectly happy producing small short films, shooting them, editing them, kind of being a one-woman production company, working for nonprofits and schools. I really love working on different things that are meaningful and fun for me. And then the 2016 election happened. And I realized that I had to do something about it. I wasn't sure what it was, but I just felt like there was this dis-ease in the air. And I started interviewing people and talking to them about how they felt. And then the Women's March came along. And I thought, you know what would be interesting is if I could find some ordinary women. And we do have a man that at one point I decided I didn't want it only to be women. Oh, actually, I know exactly why I decided that. When I went to the Women's March, I asked my husband if he wanted to come, and he said, no, that's just for women. So I didn't want this film to be just for women. So I thought I should find someone to be a male subject in the film. And so that's where I found Congressman Gutierrez. However, I wanted to have everyday Americans tell the story of how they were responding to a president who, as a candidate, threatened their civil rights. And that's how I ended up with Margaret, who is here, and with Mimi and the other subjects in the film.
Well, you know, Cheryl, what I didn't hear you say, or what I might have missed, was that you're interested in telling stories, and then there was the Women's March. Were you inclined towards those kinds of issues before that epiphany? Or in other words, did you survive a conservative Midwest upbringing? How did that shape for you?
Well, I am the black sheep of my family, or as I call myself, the blue sheep. I do growing up in a military family. My parents are very conservative, and so are my siblings. So yeah, they're not as excited about this film as a lot of people who see it. However, having said that, I believe that one of the reasons I was compelled to make this film, and I really believe I was just kind of fueled by my fury at what I saw our country turning in the wrong direction. And I think that came from my military upbringing, or my, being in a military family, because my dad went to West Point, and we would sit around the family table and we would talk, duty, honor, country, which is West Point's motto. It was kind of our family's motto. We would talk about American exceptionalism, and I would learn about, why our country and this democracy was so great. And my dad fought in Vietnam, and my 7-year-old self, believed that what this country stood for was worth fighting for and dying for. And so I had to speak out. I feel that creating this film is something that I am doing because I love our country, because I believe that we do have a potential here in this country that is difficult for a lot of other countries. They aren't founded with the same constitution that we are. And so I decided that I needed to tell these stories, and that was my own personal driving force, I guess. But it's really the people, the subjects in the film that created it, what the film became, because their passion and their enthusiasm and their aggravation and frustration as well is what drives the film forward.
And I suspect, and Margaret and Mimi, we can hear from you on this, but I think the launch points for our cast members or our subjects here were probably considerably different than yours. Ladies?
Yes, I'll let them answer, and you heard a little bit about mine, but yes, Mimi and Margaret have very different answers.
Margaret, you want to go first?
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having all of us on today. I'm very honored. I did not know Cheryl Cram until the day of the Women's March. That was January 21st of 2017, although we had spoken by phone. I was introduced to her by my niece who knew her. And I jumped at the opportunity to be a part of the documentary because I believed I had a story to tell. And my story goes back several decades ago. I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee. And at the age of 8, I learned about Jim Crow laws because I wanted to go to the zoo, and my mother had to sit me down to explain why that was an impossibility for me, because my parents, my mom and my dad, refused to let anybody go to the zoo on only one day if we couldn't go for the rest of the days. She told me at that point that we were as good as anybody else, and that it was a white mythology that claimed that white meant superiority. And I didn't understand all of the repercussions from that 1944 when I was 8 years of age. I didn't know exactly what it meant, but I knew that something important had happened to me. And I knew that I was determined as I grew older to do something about it. And so at an early age, I began to read a lot about the history of the United States. I majored in history. I do a lot of genealogy. And eventually, I've never fully understood the why, but I know the reasons behind it. And so when Cheryl asked me to be a part of this, I had already been at protest marches most of my adult life. And so it was an easy thing to once again become a part of another kind of a protest, because here for the first time, it was not only Black people marching in the streets, it was a whole group of everybody marching. Well, not marching because it was too crowded to march, but everybody standing on the mall that January 17th, 2017 date, white, Black, Muslims, you name it, everybody was there. And this is what I hoped that America could be like every day. And we're working toward that goal, because I truly believe that we have the capabilities, we have everything that we need to create the United States the way it's written on paper, even though it had omitted me at the very beginning in 1776. We gradually have been included. I truly believe, I really do, that there are enough people in the United States of America who together we can form a union that is actually for all of us and not just for some of us because of the color of our skin or our religion or who we love or anything else. And so I'm hoping Reisterhood, in fact, I know that the Reisterhood documentary has already changed some attitudes. And with the last few days remaining with this November 3rd election coming up, I believe it will change many more, because we see what is happening. I see what is happening. And even though I started off a protest march working for justice and equality, I'm ending up fighting for the institutions that define our democracy, because they are on the line. And if we lose those institutions, what good is a vote? What good is having equality if we can't do anything except be sit back and be silent with an authoritarian president and his buddies who surround him? And so it's sort of like, it's ironic. I'm fighting for the institutions, even though those same institutions had never treated me as an equal individual. But I believe until we can define who we are as a country, and it starts with those institutions, we're lost. So my plea for those who are listening, you need to go out and vote, not just for the President of the United States, but you need to vote for the senators and the House of Representatives who will give him the ammunition he needs to correct the damage that has been done to the United States of America. He can't do it by himself. We all have to be a part of it. We have to be included. And we have to have people in our Senate, especially, who will not deny the changes that the masses of people are determined to get. I probably have spoken longer than what I had intended to. So Mimi, why don't you finish up?
All right. Well, thank you everybody for inviting us. It's always great time when I am with my two friends, CJ and Margaret, because they inspire me. I got to know CJ when she started doing her documentary, and she was looking to present the Muslim community and immigrant community. So she had reached out to me, and my story is all about Muslim women and immigrant people, immigrant women and immigrant people in general. I wanted to tell everybody that I want you to hear our voices, and I want to educate the American community, the immigrant community about that. You know, don't think that everything is free in America. It's only buy one, get one free, because we leave our home to come seek the democracy and the freedom in America. And then we find out that, well, it's not really free, except buy one, get one free, you know, and I always tell them that you really have to understand the American system and make it work for you. And understanding it and doing your civic duty is really crucial for us. It's really, if you really want to say, I am a good American citizen, then you have to do your civic duty. You have to learn about the system, and you have to practice, and you have to go out and vote. We come from different countries, and most of the countries we come from, we never vote. I was talking with my husband the other day. I said, when was the last time we voted? He said, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. We really never know what voting is all about. And for Margaret, today was the best day in Maryland. It was early voting. The lines were way, way back. And we kept passing the democratic ballot, and everybody were hungry and ready and wanted to get the ballot and see what they're gonna do. So there is good news, there is momentum there, the word is out, everybody is ready to get rid of this orange man in the house. So it was a happy day for me. I've been there since 7 o'clock in the morning, and I just got here so I can be on the Zoom and tell you the good news and tell you that the Democratic Party are awaking and ready. And November 3rd, we'll have a new president with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Right? Because I was really excited today. I was wearing my scarf and wearing my mask, you know, and of course, look. So I really look at me. And I said, people are going to be scared of me. Like, you know, I mean, oh, you know. So anyway, I did it, and people were happy. They came to talk to me. They were not scared. So I wanted to tell everybody, Cheryl, your documentary had the effect on people, and every people is getting out and ready to vote. So that's my story. And I will continue as we come along, but today was an exciting day for me.
But I want to cut in here for just a second to let people know, Mimi volunteers as a poll. Are you a poll watcher?
Yes.
Yes, and so she's out there. Yeah, she is out there doing voter protection. Look at this. Mimi is doing this. This is what we can all do, and we all need to do it. We can go out there and, goodness, you know, we just have to step up and be more like Mimi and be more like Margaret.
You know, we had the sample ballot for the Democratic Party, and we thought I was working in Damascus Center area, which is mainly Republican community, and we thought, well, we don't need that many ballots. We ran out of ballot because everybody wanted the Democratic ballot, you know.
Yay.
Yes. So I had to text message him. I said, I need more. I said, how many you need? 250. So it was really, really exciting. People are coming to you and asking, can I get the ballot? Can I see the ballot? that never happened before. Before we used to, would you like the ballot? Would you like, they are hungry. They see that I'm wearing the Democratic sign and I'm standing by the Democratic sign, and they come to you. On the other hand, the Republicans were really pushing hard. And I talk to them and say, hi, how are you? Good to see you. I offered them some of my baklava because I made the baklava and took it with me. I said, we can enjoy food. Food is a universal language. They said, yes, ma'am. So I was determined to break the ice and build a good relationship, even with the Republican.
Just to throw in a plug here about getting involved. Yeah, I've been working with the Democratic Party in Hamilton County here in Cincinnati for the better part of like 4 months now, and we still need help over this next week, especially at the BOE. So thank you, Mimi, for doing that. And anyone watching this or in this conversation right now, you can go to democrats.org/take action. To find a way to get involved at your local level. And if you're here in Cincinnati, it's hamiltoncountydems.org/get-involved/volunteer.
Yes. Okay, turn it back to you, CJ.
Well, I think that's one of the things that that we hope comes out of the film is that people realize that they have power, that they have a voice, that they have, not only the privilege of voting and being involved, but it's also the responsibility. It's so important. And the one thing that I'm not hearing anybody say, and we now that we have this engaged voting populace, we need to say that you have to vote every election. I think once we get our president in, the midterms were like, we got this, we're okay. And that's always when the other side gets a big, gets control of Congress, and that just stifles everything. So make sure that you vote not only in the presidential elections and not only for the people at the top, all the way down and in every election. So yes, make sure your voice is heard. Margaret.
Well, yes, I agree wholeheartedly, because that's been a push that I have had in mind and imparted to my friends and my family over the years, that voting for president occurs only every 4 years. But there are other elections. There is your council, your city, your state, all kinds of elections. There are the primaries. And my push has always been, don't simply vote for a president every 4 years, because a president all by himself is helpless. Well, not helpless, but he needs support of the Congress, of the governors, of state legislatures. It all has to work together. When you think about what President Obama faced the last 6 of his 8 years, that should have been a reminder for everybody that simply because you had a president who had a progressive agenda didn't mean anything if you didn't have a Senate and a House of Representatives to agree with those issues, which in the end, for 6 years, President Obama and his staff could not put forth a single judge anywhere because McConnell blocked it. He simply didn't bring it up for a vote. So what Cheryl says is probably more important than who the president is, because the Congress passes the legislation. The Congress has the power of the purse. The Congress has the power to elect judges and members of the Supreme Court who are there for life. And if you don't have the proper people in office to support a president, then being out in the street marching has little effect. It has almost no effect. Look at where we are. Look at where we were, and look at where we are now. And you think about I didn't march the full way from Selma to Montgomery, but I participated in that march. And at the end of the march, coming home, we thought we had done so much good, black and white together, moving our union ahead, perfecting the Union. And then what happened to the Voting Rights Act of 1965? In 2013, it was gutted. Why? Because you didn't have a Senate who could do something about it to prevent that. And so I encourage those of you who are listening, don't believe anything that you hear about your vote not matter, that it won't count. You matter. Your vote matters. Don't let anybody take away your power. Go to the polls and vote every time there is an election. I can't stress that enough, because don't let somebody else make your decisions for you. Make your own decisions. Get out there and vote now.
Margaret, I see Andrea has a question or comment. Go ahead.
Well, what I think is extraordinary is how many people have no idea about basic civics. So what Margaret was saying about how these important decisions are made on the local level, that's where states gerrymander. That's where local state voter suppression decisions are made. That's where judges are put on the bench. And if you don't vote, and that's where school boards are elected. And school boards are tremendously powerful in impacting the future generation. So I think people need to learn what Margaret's talking about. And yet when I talk to people, they have no idea basically how the government functions. They don't understand the Electoral College and its implications. They don't know that we almost overturned the Electoral College in the early 70s. So it's really exciting to hear people like Margaret and Mimi getting other people jazzed up. I think like one of the high points in the film to me is that young man that you talk to all the time, Margaret. Is he your grandson?
You're muted, Margaret.
Yeah, he's my grandnephew.
Oh, extraordinary child. But one of the things he said was that when he sees you, it makes him know that he can do this and that he can make a difference. And and the young people today are really cheering me, how active they are, how active all the races have been in the Black Lives Matter movement. And they're not going to back down. And I love to see that your great grandnephew has now been mobilized. And that gives me hope. That whole film gave me hope. It's been a rough election, a really rough election. And it's hard to maintain a positive point of view. When I voted early, I was so absurdly happy that my vote was in. Mm-hmm. But that high, was over after a day, right? So I really love watching that film. I forgot how powerful the Women's March was. And the footage was extraordinary, just extraordinary. So I will shut up because I can go on.
Looks like
well, Andrea, it's Tim here. I'll jump in with one. One of the things that surprised me about this film was the sense of joy, for want of a better word, or enthusiasm that I saw in all of the subjects that we were introduced to in the film. There was really an esprit de corps, and anger drives a lot of things. Dedication is important, but when people are actually joyful about what they're doing and pursue it with relish, that to me is just so important, and that's one of the main things that I saw come across.
Dick Westheimer has a comment.
Yeah, there we go. I have two. One is, the director, your name is CJ, is that correct? You had said at the beginning that you gathered ordinary women to be part of this film. And I don't know if they appeared to you to be ordinary when you first met them, but both here and in the film, they appeared to me to be extraordinary. And, you know, I immediately went and kind of tried to find out more about both of you and the other people in the film. The second thing is that I had an epiphany during the film. I had sort of dismissed the effectiveness of the Women's March as a long-term movement. As a matter of fact, at the beginning of the film, I turned to Debbie and said, well, a lot of good that did. And, you know, it seemed like such a monumental piece. And then as the film went on, I made the connection between the march, and this is almost a comment to you, Margaret, because, you know, we talk about the effectiveness of these things, that 2018 and the all of the, you know, the women candidates who made themselves viable, both at local, you know, very hyper local and then congressional elections, and the flipping of the House, I think, could be traced back to both the Women's March and the activism around the Muslim ban at the beginning, sort of that sense of solidarity that you all gave by marching and people participating in those things. And Debbie, who was at the March for Our Lives, you know, all of those things made 2018 happen. And we would be in a world of worse hurt had there not been that. And we have all these wonderful new role models, mostly younger, mostly women, who are occupying our how we think of the world. And I think it's those of you who participated in those marches and how you documented it, CJ, that are part of what I hope is a continued rise of those voices in 2020. To Margaret's point, at all, and Mimi's point, at all levels of government.
May I make a comment, because what you stated reminded me of the late 1950s throughout the entire 1960s, all of the civil rights marches that were going on, the bus set of Rosa Parks and the bus, which had started actually the unrest. Well, actually the unrest had started from the beginning. So let me pick a point where I will talk about an unrest. And that would have been the Emmett Till murder. That aroused so much emotions, not just in Black people, but in an entire community. And from that 1954, I believe, murder of that young boy, the 14-year-old, all the way through the 1955, up through 1968 with the Fannie Hamer and the Democratic Party, all of those events, the Vietnam War, all of these conflicts, the deaths and assassinations of Medgar Evers, the assassination of Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, all of those 60s that resulted in the march from Selma to Montgomery, and then the more deaths, the more assassinations. A lot had been achieved. We can't say that nothing happened, because a lot of things did happen. A lot of evil happened. But in the end, in 1968, you got your first Black female member of the House of Representatives, Shirley Chisholm. That was an accomplishment. It took a lot to get there, but it was an accomplishment all the same. It took a few more years for Black senators to be a part of the United States who were popularly elected. So as I grow older, I am reminded over and over that you never, ever achieve justice. It's a lifelong, everlasting thrust toward perfecting a union. So just because you got something done doesn't mean you can sit back and say, well, now that's done, because it's ongoing. And so the young people out on the streets today as a result of the assassination of Mr. Floyd, they're young people, they're white people, they're old people, they're Black people, they're all people out there on the streets. And when I visualize an ongoing route to make sure we have justice and equality. I think of John Lewis standing on Black Lives Matter Plaza. Just before he died, he knew he was dying. And to me, he was handing the baton to these young marchers who, once again, will carry on the fight for justice long after all of us are gone. And so I see the fight for equality and justice and perfecting the union as an ongoing series of steps, one election after another after another. And perhaps that's a good thing. In fact, I know it's a good thing. So
I wanted to talk to something that Dick talked about with coming from the Women's March, and women really standing up and taking this resistance, leading this resistance since the 2016 election. And I think when you look back at it, it really didn't have to do with the fact that the first woman candidate was defeated. If it had been Marco Rubio or Jeb Bush or even Ted Cruz, you know, we wouldn't have been happy. But 7 million people around the world would not be protesting the day after the inauguration. It wasn't the fact that Hillary Clinton lost. It was the way that this man won. And it was the division, and it was the tearing down, and it was just it was the fact that people in this country aren't created equal, and he just the othering. And I think that is where women who, we are naturally the caregivers and naturally the ones who I guess, want to bring people together. This is the way it seems in my mind. And so it seemed that it was the women who finally said enough. We can't let this go on anymore. We can't let this man continue to write our path forward, and we have to come together and speak out. And I do think that that's what led to so many women running for office. As a matter of fact, Jessica Gutierrez, the congressman's daughter, who ended up running for city council in Chicago, she was living in Israel. She was teaching English. She was a school teacher. She's still a school teacher, but she was teaching English to Palestinian children, women, I believe. And when she saw what was happening in this country, she came back and said, I need to run. And so I think she's just one of many. And I hope, I know that there are many, many, many more women running this election on par with the last election. So I'm hoping that we will see another Year of the Woman coming up starting next week.
I want to add to this point about women and how women got so empowered. The biggest mistake that Donald Trump did is to make women angry. You do not want to make a woman angry, because if you make women angry, you better watch out. So that inspires, I always say, if I can run my household, I can run the whole country. So that skills, we already have it natural. It's just that we've been told we can't do anything good, we can run, we can do it, our place is home. Now, every woman decided to take a part and and have a seat at the table. And don't let people decide our life for us. And I want to give a credit for a program called Emerge Maryland. There is a program that helped Democratic women to run for public office, and it's in all over the United States. I graduated from that program in 2013, and I ran and I won because I didn't have the confidence. I know what I need to do, and I know what I need to say, but I did not have the structure that when I go out and speak, I gotta look this way, I gotta do this way, how to raise money. So Emerge Maryland have taught me all I need to do. And now in Annapolis here, this year, we have 15 women who graduated from Emerge Maryland who are in Annapolis and they're running. So that what he did made us mad. It went the wrong way for him. So, but it helped us as women that we have the confidence and we have to speak our mind and we have to have our voices heard. So I just wanted to agree with CG and everybody that women now have a seat at the table and they have their voices heard loud and clear.
Mimi, this is Tim. I have a follow-on question for you. In our community, there are two principal mosques, and in my encounters with the Muslim community dating back to 9/11, pretty much the thinking was to keep a low profile, be vigilant, but not create a lot of waves. And that's a generalization, of course, but that was my sense of what the feeling was. So I wonder what you encountered in your own Muslim community, and if you've been able to get people energized and feel like participating.
Yes, of course. After 9/11, every woman who wore a scarf, they either took their scarf off totally or they hide in their house. We were so much scared because people identify us as terrorists. And people used to ask me, oh, how come you're still wearing your scarf? Aren't you afraid? And I wasn't at that time because in my community, people got to know who Mimi is before that happened. So they know me as an individual woman, as an Egyptian woman, you know. They didn't really pay attention to my scarf. But when Donald Trump ran, I guess he validated all those people who, were under the ground, came above the ground, and they felt like they can speak up their mind. And I'm sure you saw what happened in the movie, that when I was called, hey, you lady from ISIS, go back to your country. And I said, what are you talking about? I got scared. This is the time when the Muslim community got even more scared, because there is a difference between, you could be politically correct, you assume, but it wasn't in the open. You know what I'm saying? You know that when you are in a place that people are looking at you differently. But for me, I didn't wait for them to come and tell me, or treat me different. If I've been treated different, I'll go to them and say, hi, my name is Mimi. I'm from Egypt. I start a conversation related to art or food, and then we get into the politics. So I took it upon me how to engage with the community who look at the Muslim community that they're bad people. And I was able to really build the bridges and really help other people, because it's a lack of ignorance. People don't know. I always say education is your passport into integration. The American people here, if they get educated the right way, they are willing to work with you. But when you feed them the wrong information, they go against you. So that is my own experience. But then I try to help our Muslim community to really understand that don't wait for them to come to you. You go out and talk. And I was able to encourage some of the people, but in general, because Muslim women are always looked upon like we walk behind our husband, we're not educated and all that stuff. Let me tell you something. I may walk behind my husband in the street, but he walks behind me at home. So we have the power. It's just that we don't bring it out, So I try to educate our Muslim community, especially the women, that to really get the courage and look and take upon themselves to go out and educate people and let them know why we wear the scarf, and let them know that if you really want to enjoy America, you have to understand the system. You have to have a seat at the table. We're tired of being on the menu. We're tired that everybody eats my baklava and say, oh, it was so delicious. And that's it. And then after that, they said, oh, Muslim people are terrorists, you know. So it's about time that we educate and we build bridges and let the next generation cross it safely.
Yeah,
I hope I answered your question.
I actually would like to piggyback off that and ask you guys some thoughts on that education, how we might be able to teach both our youth and people my age and people older, like learning new things that we didn't learn in school about minority communities. You know, I think especially in the wake of George Floyd, the things I've been educating myself on that I didn't learn in school about how African Americans were treated, both in yes, from 1619 on. Do you guys have any thoughts, any ideas of what we could do to change that education for people going forward?
Yeah, here in Montgomery County, I have joined something with the Board of Education. It's called Education Community, which is all interfaith group. Because there was a lot of bullying to the Muslim student and Sikh people, you know, from different faiths. And so at the Board of Education, under the leadership of the interfaith liaison person, we went and talked to them and we said, we are willing to help you and we are willing to help educate the parents and let them know about the different faith in the community. So we had a program called Parents Academy, and then we had different meetings from different religious groups to come and talk to the parents, whether it's about the religion, whether it's about the race, anything. So there was the Sikh community, the Hindu community, the Muslim community, the Jewish community, the Baha'i community, Christian community, African American community. So if you really want to reach out to the people, you have to reach out to through the interfaith, because that's where you will find them at. You know, a lot of people don't come to that 7:30 meeting or the PTA meeting that it's Monday, Friday, you know, Tuesday. You know what I'm saying? Like they don't understand how important it is. But if you want to reach out to the immigrant community or any other community, reach out to them at their worship place. This is where they have Sunday school. This is where you can build the bridge with the parents. While their kids are getting their lessons through the religious, the parents are sitting downstairs in the cafeteria, don't know what to do. So have lectures. So we partnership with the Board of Education here in Montgomery County. We created a group called Education Committee, and which have all the different faith and background, culture, and we start educating others about the different race and culture and religion. And it's been grateful and it's been very helpful. Now we're trying to work on the race. Before it was the religion. Now we're trying to work about the race issue. So hopefully we will be able to be successful in that.
I have a comment also. There's a 1619 project that has recently been introduced, and several school systems are piggybacking on that curriculum. But in terms of teaching Black history, which is really American history, and infusing it with the textbooks that we use, I don't see that coming in the near future. I believe eventually we will get there. But your question, Joseph, was how can we learn about a history that's not taught? So at this point, individual teachers are doing it and have always done it, but that's only a few people who have gotten the knowledge. Depending on where you live and who your teacher is and how they think, depends. That's it. So unless it's in a textbook where every single person is getting the same information, it's very difficult. A Black person doesn't know their history either, because it's not taught in a book for the ones growing up now. When I grew up, I was in a segregated school. All of my teachers were Black. They were all educated. I probably know more Black history at the time that I was growing up than the typical person walking around, because my teachers made sure that I did. It was not in a textbook because it was against the law to have that in a textbook in Memphis, Tennessee, at the time that I was in first grade through 12th grade. So a lot of it is on your own, to be perfectly honest. You need to go out on your own initiative and read the books that make a difference to what you're learning, not just a novel. And I would recommend W.B. Du Bois as one, E. Franklin Frazier as another. A lot of James Baldwin's books speak about the past years, but they are really relevant to today's time. So there are so many authors and writers out there where on your own initiative, a young person can take advantage of. If you're waiting for teachers in different school systems to add that to the curriculum, I think we have a long wait coming. And that includes Montgomery County Public Schools.
I do agree with you, Margaret. I was talking before about the problem was with the religious group.
I know, right.
Because it was the Muslim being bullied, the Hindus and all that stuff. Right now, this year, we are working on the race issue, and we're trying really exactly to do exactly what you're saying about teach the history the right way, and give the kids the opportunity to learn about the history, because without a history, especially for someone coming from Egypt, we have a history of thousands of years ago, right? So, but we're talking about, this is something new, the race issue, and it's something that we are trying to really work on it. So hopefully we will be successful. And CJ will make another documentary about that, before and after, right?
Yes, and I do want to say this brings us back to voting too. As I think Margaret said and Mimi earlier, you vote for your school board. At least most states, I think you vote for your school board, but you also vote all the way down the line, and it's about getting the funds to the schools. We've defunded the schools so terribly. And I think that's another thing, that getting more women elected will really help. There's a reason most teachers are, the majority of teachers are female. We want to educate the younger generation. And so it's all about getting involved. And there's another thing, just stepping out and learning about other people. As Mimi says in the documentary, ask somebody how you make samosa, give us your recipe for baklava. Mimi, by the way, you have to give us your recipe for baklava. But Please. It is all about learning, that we're all human. And that's another thing that I want to stress about this documentary. People see it as such a partisan documentary. It starts off with Donald Trump and some of the stuff he says, and all of that stuff he said when he was running as a candidate, which is why we started it that way. That was the catalyst for the Women's March that spurred us on. But it's not, I don't see it as a red and blue issue, what's going on right now. I see it as a human versus an inhumane issue. What's happening? You see children being separated from their parents. This is not what this country stands for. And so we have to stand and talk to other people and learn how they think and how they feel. Yes, Tim, were you? I thought he was.
Hello?
Yes.
What? Sorry, I'm blind. Talk to me.
I thought you were saying something there.
Not exactly.
Okay.
I'll throw in a quick plug here to piggyback off the vote, talking about voting this year. You can go to votesaveamerica.com/plan to learn, not only plan out how you're going to vote, but also learn about all of your ballot races. They spent, I don't know, hundreds of hours compiling statewide, local, citywide elections, and not only just who's on the ballot, but like who they're endorsed by, all their information. It's a really, really amazing tool that they put together. So again, that's votesaveamerica.com/plan.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And there's also the issues that are on the ballot as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This was a comment. Go ahead.
Nonpartisan ballots are important also. In Ohio, our Supreme Court justices are nonpartisan, or at least non-party affiliated, but they are partisan. And it pays to try to dig into who those folks are, because they have tremendous influence over things like redistricting and challenges to redistricting. So we are not forgiven of having to do the work of having to research this and then talk to other folks about it. The good news here locally is that there are a lot of folks who are asking. I've had 2 or 3 friends say, so I don't know who to vote for. Tell me why I should, tell me who I should vote for in the Supreme Court. And I haven't had that before. I think it's just people who are starting to realize what all of you have been saying, is that up and down the ballot, it's good to know. I have actually a non-film related question for Margaret. Did you know, when she lived in the DC area, Yvonne Sion, the poet, scholar, mother of David Chappelle?
No, I did not. I didn't.
I think she was in the Silver Spring area. And
what years? Do you have any idea what year?
I don't. I know that she's in Yellow Springs now, but when I first heard your voice, you both have that sort of mid-Atlantic, beautiful voice, and the music of your voice is the same as hers, and so I made the geographic connection.
Well, no, I grew up in Memphis, lived in Chicago for a number of years, but I've lived here most of my adult life. So, yeah. Did not know that.
Sorry for the distraction.
That's okay. Margaret's a poet as well.
I had a comment to make in terms of my overall history, because when you live in America, as I have lived all of my life, Black history has so many more dimensions than anybody else's history. And it starts with the fact that we, along with the indigenous people, are not immigrants. Okay, we were forced to be here. And that peculiar institution that grew up around that forcing us to be here is threaded through every single event in my life, whether it's where I can live, where I can do whatever. It threads itself through every single crevice of American history. And so Cheryl mentioned about funding education. Then I think about that. I think about neighborhoods. Neighborhoods get money based on property taxes. Property taxes depends on what your house is worth. What your house is worth depends on where you can live. So all of these issues are not just surface issues. They go back to the very beginning. They go back to a beginning that says that a Black body is property. It is not human. And that threads itself through from 1619 to 2020. Why do you think that policeman put his knee on George Floyd's neck for almost 9 minutes? There was something about that act that said that that man was not a human being. And he's just one of a series of incidents in American history. Why do you think they hung men and women who were Black up on trees by the neck? There was something about that that infiltrates a human body and states that you're property and you're no use. What I like about what is happening over the years, Not all people have been like that. But so many people who did not believe in doing that sat silent, said nothing, permitted it to happen. What I see today is that more and more people are speaking out. No, this is not the right thing to do. This is inhumane, like taking the babies, the brown babies, from their parents and caging them. To me, that's old stuff. That goes back to slavery, where a baby was born of a Black mother, and before they could even be born, they were sold somewhere else. The Me Too movement, that's nothing new. That's been back since 1619, when a Black slave's body was used as a waste receptacle because of lust. So there's nothing new under the sun. So everybody in America can talk about being an immigrant and what it takes to be that, but nowhere does it thread itself through American history that makes a Black body somehow still different for a large swath of white people who live in the United States of America. And no matter how you look at it, that's the truth. But when I look at it today in 2020, as opposed to, say, 1950, I do see a difference. I see more and more people speaking out. I see more and more people understanding that the color of a skin has nothing to do with the contents of the heart, as Martin Luther King would have said. And so I am so appreciative of that. That's why I have so much hope about what is to come in the United States of America. And I think that that new change is going to start November 3rd, and it's going to culminate in a January 20th, 2020 WON, as I like to say, 2020 WON victory. But it won't end there. It's going to take all of us to make it succeed. And that's where voters come in. That's where you don't just vote one time, but you stay involved with your representatives. You make a phone call. You write a letter. Sometimes my card is only to say thank you for what you did. Sometimes it's a whole letter. Cheryl knows I got a wonderful letter from Eric Holder because I had written him a letter. And he personally wrote me a letter, and I still remember the last line. He said, well, thank you, Mrs. Morrison. When things get rough, I will think of what you said. And to me, that meant a lot. So make phone calls. Let people know what's going on. I tell my relatives, well, Margaret, I live in a Republican state, so it won't make it a difference. I said, that's exactly why you should contact them. Because if they don't hear from you, they think everything is okay, or they tend to believe. So my encouragement to them is the more you contact the people who represent you to let them know how you feel, the better off all of us will be. And so don't just vote and sit back. Write letters, make phone calls throughout the year. It only takes 2 or 3 minutes to sit and write a postcard to say thank you, or to say, I don't agree with what you did, and this is why. And it takes even less to make a phone call and leave a message. So I encourage people not to vote, but to be an active participant every single day of the year, year after year. Then you make change. Things will change.
This is great, Margaret. I totally agree exactly about what you said. But as an immigrant, I just realized that racism was embedded in the system. And it's still embedded in the system. We just need to know how to open that system again and be able to talk about it freely and really educate people. Let the African American tell their story, not written by other people. But that for me, I just realized after 50 years been here that racism is embedded in the system. So hopefully we can open our heart, able to cross the bridges, build more bridges, educate, and talk. Food and art are universal language. Let's try all the different spices around the world. You can cook the chicken and put the teriyaki sauce on it And then you're in China. You can put the barbecue sauce in it, and oh boy, those hot wings, spicy wings. You're in the African community, and put all those 5 spices from the Middle Eastern store, and then you're in Egypt or Lebanese or anything. Make sure to taste all the flavor of the spices around the world, and let's all work together. Open our heart, our mind and soul, and our spirit, and connect.
Yep, you're right, Dick. They're pretty extraordinary subjects that we had in the film. Can't really say too much more than what Margaret and Mimi have put out there. And but boy, we really appreciate your tuning in and giving a platform for the film. And just to let you know, we have we've sent it for free to colleges and universities, and along with our voter toolkit on our website, which is resisterhooddoc.com. We have a voter toolkit that's aimed at young voters to answer any kinds of questions. It has a lot of links that Joe was talking about in there. And so this is the way we begin. And I think a lot of it is, I love to see the different stories and hear and taste the different flavors of the different people. And so that's just the message that we all have to get out there and keep spreading.
I have to say, I really appreciate this conversation and hearing from Mimi and Margaret and Cheryl. It's really revitalizing. While we've been sitting here, unfortunately, Amy Coney Barrett was confirmed by the Senate and is now going to the Supreme Court. But after hearing you guys speak, it really, instead of looking at that with despair, like piggybacking off what you just said, Cheryl, it's like, now we get to work. Now we start moving, we start pressing forward. We can't stop, because the second we do, something like another ACT is going to come along and try and set us back. So thank you so much for the words of encouragement, all of you. Really appreciate it.
And Joseph, thank you too for jumping in here and moderating. I'm so upset that I can't see your faces. My wife can't see your faces. We didn't get to participate as much as we want, but the experience was invaluable. And I really appreciate your time, CJ and Mimi and Margaret. You're doing great things, and don't stop.
Thank you. And thanks again for having us and for sharing the film in the theater. It's wonderful to be there. I feel like I'm back in Cincinnati, which it's a beautiful city. And I do have a lot of friends, and I get back there every now and then. I'm not sure when the next time will be. Hopefully it won't take too long until we're all allowed to travel again. So everybody be well and be hopeful.
Hey, thank you, Tim.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Thank